Hey guys, what's going on? I wanted to do a quick short file for you today. I'm going to try and stay out of the politics and all that, but I want to talk about this Twitter mess and the social media thing because as most of you who know me know already, I'm fascinated with social media in a rhetorical sense as far as the rhetoric behind social media and what happens and what social media has actually done to teach Aristotelian modes and basic rhetoric function to the populace. So to me, that's pretty cool. So I want to talk a little bit about what's happening with this executive order in Twitter, and I'm going to try and stay from crossing into the politics of it and what I think politically about it, but we'll see, right? It's treading lightly, walking on a glass floor, I guess you'd say. First, though, I want to tell you probably, for those of you who may be looking for it, you probably noticed that the beta files has not been posted yet. I'm skipping the beta files this week, mainly because I just did not have time to sit down and write and film the two sketches that I was going to do. So we're just going to skip it this week. I mentioned in a article that I wrote, or a blog post that I wrote yesterday, that I kind of hit a stumbling block, and the stumbling block was just basically time management and figuring out how to do this stuff with a schedule. And I've got, as I mentioned in the article, I kind of mentioned in the article, I've gotten a pretty decent schedule down now that, like I said in the article, should have been obvious from the get-go, but I wasn't thinking. I was thinking about all these other things. It's kind of crazy how that works. You try to organize, and then you realize that the organization that you did was completely disorganized. So there's that. So skipping the beta files this week. It'll be back next week. We'll come back with definitely with the Optic Poet. I still want to do the Janus thing, but I probably am only going to do that once or twice and then move on to do something else. And same thing with the two Brians. I don't think I'm going to do many more of the two Brians. To be honest with you, logistically, that one, the two Brians, even though it's funny, is really hard to pull off. Basically because I just don't have the practice with the timing, and maybe in the future I'll bring it back after I get my timing better. But right now it's really difficult. The first one that I did, the little promo that I did that was about 45 seconds long, I think, took about 4 hours to do. And then the second one that I did that was on the beta files last week took nearly 9 hours to get that done right. And you notice it didn't last that long. It was only about 5 or 6 minutes long. And there were a couple of screw-ups in it where at the end I was just like, you know what, just leave them in, it doesn't matter. Like the gaff with the glasses. I decided, you know what, just leave it. So I don't think right now I have the experience to pull off the two Brians. I want to try and do one more, and it's an idea that I think is going to be absolutely hilarious. And it will be longer, and I promise you this time nobody's going to storm off, so you'll get to see a full version of the two Brians on the next one whenever I get a chance to film it. Richard Cranium's going to keep going. That one is the easiest one for me to film, believe it or not. The hardest part of the Richard Cranium stuff is just writing the scripts, and I wrote 2 yesterday, so I knocked 2 of them out yesterday. So that's not. I'll keep doing the Richard Cranium, and I'm thinking about incorporating some kind of version like this, where I'm talking, where it's just me talking. But it's not going to be as random as the short files are. The short files are going to stay separate from the beta files. So that's just an update on what's going on. Also, we noticed, I discovered this thing called IGTV on Instagram, where we can upload more than a minute. Originally, if you go on Instagram and you just post straight to Instagram, you only get 60 seconds per video clip. So you only get that much time. But Instagram has since, I don't know when they did it, but they have opened up this thing called IGTV, where you can upload up to 60 minutes instead of just 60 seconds. So keep an eye out on our Instagram account. There's going to be Instagram exclusive content that's not going to show up on the website or YouTube. So check that out. As far as the stuff on YouTube goes, everything is posted to YouTube is on thebetafiles.com, and everything is on thebetafiles.com is on YouTube. So the outlier is going to be Instagram. There's going to be a couple things, like we will be posting all of the Now See This Here Now Then shows on Instagram, and we're going to be posting all the text messages from the living room shows on Instagram. So we're going to do that. Optic Poet is going to stay strictly to thebetafiles.com and YouTube for now. If Jay and I decide that we need to, or it would be a good idea to move it to Instagram, we will. But for right now, it's not going to be on Instagram. So, but like I said, there are going to be other exclusive things for Instagram only that you should keep an eye out for. They'll be coming in the next month or so. And remember, I'm only in week 3 of this. I'm at the end of week 3 of launching this whole thing, so I'm still learning stuff. I gave myself about a month and a half to prepare for this, and it's obvious I needed more time than that. But we're learning, right? Trial and error. All right, so let's talk about Twitter real quick. So you probably heard the news story about how Twitter slapped a fact check on a couple of our president's tweets, and then this morning, sometime during the night, Trump, our president, released a couple of tweets about dealing with the Minneapolis riots, and Twitter slapped a warning on those. Now, the executive order that he signed the other day had nothing to do with the warning that they slapped on it this morning, but it did have to do with the fact check note at the bottom of his tweets. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about the action of the executive order. I do want to talk about what the executive order is going after, and it's this section or this law that was passed in the mid-90s about internet and protecting internet companies from lawsuits, from frivolous lawsuits for stuff that's posted on their site, even though they don't have control over it. What that law was designed to do, before we go any further, let me explain this law from what I understand. And remember, this is a short file, so this is all my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. If you disagree with me, that is totally fine. I'm down with that. I'm all about open conversation. But from what I understand, from what I've read, the law was originally intended to protect AOL, primarily AOL and Prodigy at the time, and of course future companies later, but it was primarily designed to protect them from people suing them over porn being posted to different sites. Okay? At the same time, it opened up their ability to keep pornography off their open platforms. Okay? This whole law was designed so that the companies could police against pornography and keep the porn companies from suing the internet companies, and keep individuals from suing the internet companies when pornography slipped through. That's what this law is about. Okay? Over time, because it has not been amended, because it hasn't been changed, social media happened. Now, there's no way back in the mid-90s that they knew that social media was coming. They didn't know. Okay? Mid-90s, I don't think chat rooms were in their infancy in the mid-90s. So social media was a long ways off. But as time goes on, just like with the first short file I talked about, as you see, when time progresses over the past 25 years, what has happened is the society has changed, and we have, because of the digital revolution of the late 90s, we have incorporated new avenues to use on the internet. In turn, what that has done is these social media companies have been able to hide under this law, under this provision that was, again, originally intended to protect the internet companies from being sued by pornographers and being sued by individuals when pornography slipped through. It basically gave the internet companies the right to be able to freely engage in internet commerce while at the same time addressing the problem of pornography on the internet in the mid-90s. So what I've read and what I understand of what happened with Twitter is that, according to, whichever side you're on, Twitter basically on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, whenever it was that they slapped that fact checker thing on his tweet, they were exercising their right under this particular piece of law. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that they were exercising anything under that law. What they were doing was what a private company can do. And this is where it gets tricky, because we still, even though Congress and the previous administration have both begged the FCC to sit down and come up with some kind of definition of what these social media companies are, because they're not clearly defined by anything. What has happened is kind of like a Wild West gone wild in the social media, in the internet thing. I don't know, I'm babbling, and I'm sorry about that. I've been thinking about this all morning, and I've got all kinds of thoughts rushing through my head. So if it's incoherent, it's a short file. So, what was I saying? So anyway, so there's this question of, can they do that? Now, there's two different things being thrown up in the air right now. First Amendment rights, right? Are they stifling, when they slap a label like that on anybody's tweet, are they stifling free speech? No. They didn't take the tweet down. They didn't bar the tweet. They didn't remove the author of the tweet. They just stuck a little thing underneath it that says, fact checker. We're checking the facts. And then they gave a list of resources for you to go and read that was in opposition to what the tweet was. Now, what a lot of people are arguing, and I saw this with Tim Pool yesterday, is that a lot of the stuff that they pointed users to was opinion, op-eds. Well, so's the tweet. So if you're going to, and I understand, maybe what they need to do is change the verbiage. Instead of saying fact check or, check the facts on this, maybe what they should do is instead say, here is another side. Here's another take on this. That would make more sense, in my opinion, if they're going to use op-eds, right? Now, the op-eds that they led to did have facts that they were using as evidence to back up what they were arguing. Something that the original tweet did not do. Since then, since that has happened, and I'm going to come back to number 2 here in just a second. Since that has happened, a news story has come out of New Jersey where the head of the NAACP of New Jersey is calling for a recount because mail-in ballots were, there was a scheme to tip the balance through mail-in ballots. What's interesting about that story is it's the same problem that we ran into here in North Carolina back in 2018. If you remember, there was this huge scandal down in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, where in the Charlotte metro area, where there was mail-in ballot frauds, fraudulent mail-in ballots. In both of these cases, they were for Republican candidates. And like I said, I'm not going to go down the political side of this, but the ones who are screaming the loudest about fraudulent voter fraud, not fraudulent voter fraud, but voter fraud, is the Republican side. And yet the two biggest cases of voter fraud has been for Republican candidates. And of course, there's all kinds of conspiracy trails you can shoot down that I'm not going to go down. I'm just throwing that out there so you know. And even Tim Pool yesterday in his dissection of this whole scandal even mentioned that he's like, it doesn't make any sense. Excuse me. But anyway, and I'm not going to talk about whether we should have or don't have mail-in ballots. The reality is we've had mail-in ballots for a long time. Absentee ballot is a mail-in ballot. I mean, come on, use your head. A lot of this stuff is just common sense, and yet we get caught up in the mess of it. So I think that where Twitter went wrong was not slapping a label on it. I think where Twitter went wrong was the verbiage that they put in the label. Okay, and the other thing that Twitter's been doing over the past few weeks that we're not talking about in the media, because of course the individual that they targeted on this is making quite a fuss about it, is that they have been doing this for a while with other people. They've even taken whole tweets down from other world leaders. They've been reluctant to touch this individual. In fact, one of the biggest controversies right now are the series of tweets in which the president went after the young lady who died. I guess it was 10 years ago. It was back when Scarborough was actually in Congress. And of course, tying these conspiracy theories that Scarborough had something to do with her death. The controversy is that, number one, it's a conspiracy theory. Number two, the husband of the woman, the late woman, has been contacting Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter, and begging him to take those tweets down, and Dorsey's not doing it. So this whole thing, the whole scandal is just head-scratching. Because, again, Twitter didn't do anything to limit the president's speech. Okay? Now, having said all that, the second thing that you're hearing a lot about is that social media companies, or specifically Silicon Valley, Google, Facebook, Twitter, there is this big outcry on the right that these companies are targeting right-wing material and people who spread right-wing messages and that kind of thing. Here's the reality of the situation. You have to think of it from the standpoint of Google and Twitter and Facebook. The one thing, and Zuckerberg is the prime example of this, because Zuckerberg is a head in the sand kind of guy. All right. So, in fact, when he was quoted on Fox News as saying that he didn't feel that social media should be the arbiters of truth, so he was criticizing what Jack Dorsey did on Twitter, saying that we just let it go. But so Zuckerberg has this attitude of, you know what, just let him play. Let the stuff happen. The criticism that he's gotten is because there's so many conspiracy theories that the algorithm picks up and promotes as real news. And that's where the criticism lies. And it's a question of, and when you look at social media and these large internet distributor or large internet players, there is the question of politics and there's the question of evidence-based stories that are true. And the reality is the social media companies inadvertently are targeting right-wing personalities and right-wing internet-based machines, I guess you would say, publishing firms, right? Publishers and users, right? Because the right is the one that is posting so many conspiracy theories, so many different stories that are completely untrue, that are made up. They start out in these little bubbles on Reddit and 4chan, and then get spread through first Twitter and then Facebook, and then eventually to the larger websites, the larger right-wing websites. So so it appears from a political standpoint that the right is taking a beating from these social media companies. The reality is they are, because of the content they're posting. It's not because of their political allegiance. It's because of the content they're putting out there. You don't hear, what's interesting is you don't hear a lot of loud voices on the left crying about information or different posts being taken down. The reason for that is not because the social media companies favor the left, but it's because a lot of the people that publish things from the left are, first of all, highly educated, so they've been through school and been taught how to actually present arguments with evidence. And so when you have a post, when you have two posts, you have one that is constructed in a way where there's evidence backing it up, and you can double check the evidence, and you can verify different things that are said within that article, versus an article that is based solely on hearsay, that has been through, by the time it hits Facebook, probably 2 other channels of disinformation before it hits Facebook. So it's been through the washing machine a few times. And there's no evidence to be able to back it up, other than the fact that you can't prove it wrong, so it must be right, right? Even though there's no evidence to show that this thing actually happened or that this is taking place. Of course, they're going to take those kinds of things down. The other thing is, the left, when you look at the left, there are fringe groups out there on the left that are just as vile or just as mean. And you notice they don't show up on these social media accounts that much. And if you do see them, they're not there for long, right? Because they get taken down. And you don't hear about them in the news media, not because the media favors them, but because they're not screaming about it. They find other ways to get their message out. And for a long time, what we now call the alt-right, which to me is a bullshit term, because it's all you're doing is hiding blatant racism and blatant white supremacist views under this ambiguous term. For years, they didn't have the national attention that they're getting now. And the only reason why they're getting the national attention that they are is because of the right wing picking up some of their political ideologies. Not all of them. I'm not saying that all right-wing conservatives are racist, because they're not. Okay? But some of the ideology and some of the tactics that these groups have been using for years are starting to be deployed by the larger right-wing national party. Because of that, you're getting all these different right-wing sites that are posting these crazy conspiracy theories, these outlandish claims that have no basis in fact, And they are designed to hurt people, a lot of the times innocent people who have no dog in any kind of real fight in this political landscape that we're in. That is why the right gets attacked so much by the social media companies. It's not because of their politics. It's because of the material that they're posting. There are a lot of really smart, intelligent, right-wing conservatives out there that use evidence to back up their claims. And when I say use evidence, I'm not talking about they go to, like UFO.com to pull their evidence. They're actually using legitimate scholarly research to back up what they're saying, especially the economists. If you want to see a conservative, a really smart conservative who knows how to argue, go and look at a fiscal conservative, because they can argue with the best of them. And they get the numbers to back their stuff up. So it's pretty, they're out there, okay? These guys that are spewing conspiracy theories, though, that our president unfortunately picks up on and runs with, and that people like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and, God forbid, Laura Ingraham all run with, and Lou Dobbs, they run with this stuff. They pick it up and run. Brett Baird doesn't run with this stuff, okay? Chris Wallace doesn't run with this stuff. And these are two very intelligent conservatives who, they do let their opinions slide every once in a while, but they also back them up with facts. So the right-wing conservatives of this country are not bad people. They're not evil. There's no empire of evil that's trying to break through. What you have is a fringe element of that group that is currently dominating the conversation. And the same thing's happening on the left. The people that are most associated with AOC and Bernie, they're the loudest voices right now on the left, but they are not the majority. The majority of the left is not these people. And that's why you don't, and I'm not cutting on Bernie, but that's why you keep seeing Bernie fall short. It's simply because he just does not have the majority support from the left. That's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a reality. It's what it is. The fact that a fringe element got through to become the dominant portion of the Republican Party is scary, because it hurts the conversation. And we've seen that in the past 4 years. We've actually seen it since the Tea Party. The Tea Party was the first time that we saw that. Well, actually, you can go back. You know what? Go back to the neocons of the turn of the century, right? The Karl Roves, and then of course later we get the Tea Party, and now we've got MAGA. And it's sad because it polarizes everybody on both sides, right? Newton's law is true in everything. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? So if you have a loud right-wing voice, you're going to have a loud left-wing voice screaming back at the same volume, if not louder. And then, of course, the volume just increases. The rhetoric doesn't change, but the volume increases. Neither does the message. So to wrap up, should Twitter have done anything different? Yes, but not what you think. They should have changed the verbiage. If they're going to use op-eds, I agree with Tim Pool on this. If you're going to use op-eds, then you need to label it differently. It's not fact-checking. It's, here are other points of view. I don't see how that impinges on, even the fact-check thing doesn't impinge on anybody's rights or freedoms. It's just, hey, here's an alternative view. The law that they're fussing about, that Mr. Trump is wanting to repeal, keep in mind, originally that law was meant to protect AOL and Prodigy and other services like that in the mid-1990s from the consequences of pornography on the internet. They couldn't be sued by the porn companies, and they couldn't be sued by individuals when porn did slip through. On the flip side of that, it gave them the opportunity to be able to relegate pornography on their sites, which was a very smart thing. The problem is that law has not been amended to envelop problems that social media has brought forward. And the biggest problem with that is not the law itself and not the social media companies themselves. Is actually a failure of the FCC and Congress of not defining what social media is. We've got to get a definition. If we want to solve these problems, we've got to define what they are so we can regulate them according to that definition. That's what all this boils down to. They're out there running free because there's no clear definition of what they are. Is the right wing being targeted by the social media companies? Absolutely they are, but not because they are right wing. It's because of the material they're putting out there. If the right wing wants the attention of the social media companies to back off, stop putting that stuff out there. Because it's just blatant. A lot of this stuff is just blatantly false. And it does more harm than good. So, look for really good scholarship from the right. Good scholarship. You can find it. It's out there. There are a lot of prominent right-wing conservatives that are, again, part of the intellectual community, the scholarly community. And they write just as compelling arguments as the liberals do, and they give just as solid evidence as the liberals do. That's what we need to get back to. We need to get away from these stupid conspiracy theories. The fact that we, as a culture, have let them seep in is just scary. That's the conspiracy in itself. I usually tell people, especially my students, the only conspiracy out there is the conspiracy that there's a conspiracy. And it draws your attention away from what's actually happening. And that's what these things are designed to do. They're not designed to give you alternative views of the world. They are designed to take your eye off the ball. And they work really well right now because of social media. So, there's my 2 cents. Make it a great day. Go Dodgers.